In this program, we're going to take a look at some different ways to represent if statements that are useful in a couple different situations. So we're going to be creating a structure called nested ifs. And we'll do this with, we'll start with a compound if sort of example. So we're going to have two coins, so coin 1 and coin 2. So just to remember that char is a character variable. So for this example, these are either going to be heads or they're going to be tails. And those will be the two options for this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to prompt the user for what the face of the two coins are. So cout what, I guess, which face is coin 1 showing? And we'll see in coin 1. And then I'm going to repeat this for the other coin. So we'll copy paste here. So which face is coin 2 showing? And we'll put coin 2. Okay. So now what we want to do here is we want to tell the user either, so one of these options. So both show heads, both show tails, both show different faces. So these are going to be the three options that we want to represent here: heads, both tails, or both show different faces. Now, if we want to put the both show heads, the if statement for this would be if coin 1 equals h and coin 2 equals h, then we will have our cout both show heads. Okay. Now, this will be an else if because they can't both show heads and both show tails at the same time. So this is else. And I'll do a little copy paste here. Copy paste. And then I'm going to do the same thing for tails. So otherwise, tails. Both show tails. And then what I want to do is I'll do the last option. So otherwise, what I'm going to do is I'll cout both different faces. There we go. So I'll run the program. And which face is coin 1 showing? Let's go heads, and let's go heads again. And then it will say both show heads. And then we'll get the same kind of good output for the flip side. So now what we want to do is we want to do what's a pretty common error prevention thing where we want to represent what happens if one of the coins isn't heads or isn't tails. So what we're going to do is we're going to only do this stuff if both of them are heads. Both of them are either heads or tails. So what I want to do is I'm going to wrap this inside another if statement. And it's going to kind of look like this. So I want to check to see, and I'm doing this probably not programmed in the best way, but I want to do this if statement as a positive case. So if, now there's a bunch of things that we have to check. If coin 1 is heads, or coin 1 equals tails. So we're checking both of those scenarios. But we also want to check to make sure that coin 2 is either heads or tails. So, and coin 2 is equal to heads, or coin 2 is equal to tails. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit here. There we go. So now what I want to do is I want to have this stuff happen if this was the case. So how we would do that is we would use a curly brace here, and we are going to wrap this entire section of code within that curly brace. So now this stuff here only happens if this statement at the top is true. There's one fix-up that we have to do to this is now, because I have a section of code within this curly brace to this curly brace, we have to indicate that by tabbing. So I tab this entire section forward. So you select the whole thing and then tab it forward. And then we can put in here the else condition here. So otherwise, cout error. And we'll just simply put it at that. We'll leave it not too specifically. Okay. So here's one situation where we are nesting our if statements. So I have a series of if statements that only happen if another condition is met. Because you don't want to make these lines like if this and this, also, checking this stuff, although, I mean, it won't make sense to combine these two. But anyway, that's an example of how you could nest this. So let's take a look at another example about how we can do the heads or tails without using compound statements. And we can do this by nesting. So I'll give myself some space here. And I'm going to create another if-else ladder that will have the exact same output. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pick one of two paths. So if coin 1 equals heads, otherwise, so else if coin 1 equals tails. So what I've got is I've set myself up with a choice. My ladder is going to pick between one of these two options, either the coin is heads or the coin is tails. So now if the coin is heads, what I've got to do is I've got to check what coin 2 is equal to, and that'll help me create my output. So inside this one, we're going to put the two options. So in here, for this entire section, we know that coin 1 is equal to heads. So if coin 2 is equal to heads as well, then what we're going to do is we're going to cout both show heads. So you can see that if we make it to this branch here, then we know that this was a true statement, and this was a true statement. So it's kind of a different way of representing like an and by nesting the if statements. However, what we've got to do is we've got to check the alternate condition. So what if coin 2 was tails? So else if coin 2 equals tails, then what we're going to do is we're going to cout both different faces. Okay, now what we've got to do is slide down here and do the same thing. One thing that I like to do when I'm making this kind of structure is I've checked to see, okay, coin 1 is tails. I'm going to check to see what coin 2 is. So I can copy and paste this because I have the same things to check. So for this entire interior section, coin 1 in this case is tails. So if coin 1 is tails, so this was a true statement, and then it comes down here and finds this is true, this is going to be the both different faces. And then if it entered here and this was true, and then it found down here this was true, this would be my both show tails. Now, if I wanted to represent my, my error state, here's what I would have to do. I'm going to take this else error, and I have to put it in several different places. So the first one is my options are coin 1 could be heads, or coin 2 could be tails, or coin 1 could be coin 1 could be heads, coin 1 could be tails, or coin 1 could be some other thing. So otherwise, we're going to say that it's an error. However, we do need to put it here as well, because now inside this section, coin 2 could be heads, coin 2 could be tails, or, and get the tabbing correct as well, or it's something else and there's an error. Same thing down here. Coin 2 could be heads, tails, or there is an error. So these two structures show the exact same output. However, the second one is accomplished without any compound statements. So you can only really use this to replace ands. There's no real way to do this to replace ors. But it is a different way of laying out your if statements.